Alright, so here's the deal. I know I covered this already in my videos, and you guys know my stance. You know where I stand as far as the HDR on Red Dead Redemption 2. And as far as me criticizing Digital Foundry. Let me also clarify this because there's people out there who like to twist things around, who like to put words into my mouth. So I want to clarify this for those of you who are being misled by a lot of these trolls and haters and whatnot. Here's the deal. I'm not criticizing Digital Foundry for addressing the issue that it's not the brightest HDR. I'm not criticizing Digital Foundry for the fact that it doesn't have the best tone mapping. There's still some tone mapping in the game, but it's not the best. What I'm criticizing Digital Foundry is the way they handled this whole thing. And then making these big claims that they're using a 8-bit SDR and then they are putting it into an HDR container. Now, to prove something like that, you got to have a developers give you their entire process of how they did it. Okay, how they utilize it and all of that. Nothing has been confirmed by Rockstar. Okay, but the bottom line is this, guys. There's still HDR. It's not the best. It is not the best HDR, but it's still HDR. What does that mean? It means it doesn't have the best, brightest, bright levels. It doesn't have the best tone mapping to give you that contrast ratio. I get that. I understand that. It doesn't have a slider for the deep dark levels, digital levels, and the bright levels like all the other games. I understand that. But there's still HDR there. I just felt calling it a fake HDR sends the wrong message to a community that's already confused. I'm talking about a 4K HDR community that's already confused and it's already toxic. All right. To simply call it SDR, like SDR implementations into a 10-bit UHD television, they're basically saying like they use the filter. In other words, like there's no static metadata being processed or collected. It's just a SDR filter. I mean, look, Digital Foundry, you should know better than this. All I said was this. Digital Foundry had responsibility to say it like this. We have tested it. The HDR doesn't have the best implementations to pass as the best HDR. It has very low peak brightness. It doesn't have a good tone mapping. They could have called it differently, this entire situation. They could have said, we hope to hear from Rockstar on this. So bottom line is this. Yes, you have HDR, but it's not the best implementation of the HDR. That's all they had to say. But to flat out go out and call it a fake HDR, it sends the wrong message to a toxic community of 4K HDR that's already there. That was my whole issue about this whole thing. Why couldn't you guys take better precautions on how you handle this? Because you have 500,000 subscribers. You got 500,000 subscribers. Now here, you're looking at the chart right here that was being measured by this one guy that worked for them that did the tests. I get it. This doesn't get as bright, and the tone mapping here is not the best. You see the what you call it, the tone mapping right here on the dark areas doesn't look too great. The peak brightness here, it's not the highest. Okay, there's color gamut. But it's a decent color gamut. All right. The bottom line is this. There is HDR, guys. Let me just explain this to you in a technical terms. You can call Samsung, you can call any professional out there. They will tell you There is HDR being processed, but it's not the best HDR that qualifies to be the best. It's a bad implementation of HDR, but it's still HDR. Now, to call it fake, it's not fair. Fake HDR, it's the filter that you use on your televisions that comes with the Samsung called HDR Plus, or that HDR, whatever the LG calls it. LG has their own filter for the HDR, advanced HDR, whatever. Those are the fake HDRs. Those are the filters. When you're using a filter, then you are using a fake HDR. This is not a filter. They assume that Rockstar used SDR implementations of 8-bit into an HDR container. All right. But they don't know that for a fact because the Rockstar hasn't confirmed it. I'm just simply saying they should have handled this whole situation better. Right now, anybody out there who sees an HDR that's less than 1,000 nits, that's 700 or maybe even 680 nits, they're going to say it's a fake HDR. And that's going to create even more confusion that's already confused out there on the 4K HDR community. There's people, they're just starting to learn about 4K television. There's people, they're just switching from 1080p to 4K. And this will confuse the hell out of them. They will confuse the hell out of them. And I feel companies like Digital Foundry that has 500,000 subscribers, even you, Vincent Teo, you guys are very influential. You bear responsibility to educate people and not to spread some flat out misinformation. Fake HDR. If they haven't called it fake HDR, if they just said bad implementation of HDR, we'll wait from Rockstar's comments. But then they're saying turn off the HDR. It's just irresponsible. And this is why I got upset. I didn't get upset because they analyzed and they said it's not the best HDR. It's not because of that. It's what they did and how they handled the whole situation and how they handled it. It was done in a very poor taste, especially from Vincent, the way he handled it. I'm not disagreeing with the charts. I'm not disagreeing with all of this. I'm disagreeing the way it was being handled, the way it was being claimed. There's a difference there. And a lot of people like to twist that around. Mr. 4K this, Mr. 4K that. No, the way they handled it was bad. The way they accused the Rockstar was done bad. Okay? They're basically saying that Rockstar cheated their way into the HDR. And I think that's hitting below the belt for the Rockstar as well, and that's why they're not replying or saying anything, because they probably felt like, okay, you know, we worked really hard on this game, and now you guys are going to call us out on this. Okay? It was handled poorly. Digital Foundry knows this. Richard knows this. Even Vincent Teo knows this. Are they going to apologize? I don't think so. I don't think so. I doubt they will. They handled it really poorly. As a professional, you bear responsibility to be professional and don't put some words out there like some political campaign. Just call it bad implementations of HDR. We still have HDR, but it's a bad implementation of HDR. But to say turn it off, don't use it, I mean, come on. I mean, really. But here, let's go back to some other stuff here as well. All right, I'll just show you some charts here, as you can see. They're saying that, you know, this doesn't prove anything here because you can't see HDR. These pictures here, they're gimmicks. Because these pictures here, you can't really tell the tone mapping. You can't tell because you got to have an HDR television and you got to have a picture that's encoded in HDR for you to see the difference here. Here, when you type in fake HDR, this is what shows up. All right, and this is my issue that I have. Like here, you can see Vincent Teo, you can see Digital Foundry. So when you type in fake HDR, you're going to see three people. You're going to see Digital Foundry, you're going to see Vincent, and then you're going to see me here. And I said that I'm not turning off my fake HDR off, and here's why. And this is the reason why. And I said it because I felt that it's not a proper way to address this whole situation. The proper way to address the situation was to say, there is HDR, but it's not the best implementation of HDR, and we're going to contact Rockstar, see what they have to say about this till further notice. That's what they should have done. That's what they should have said, but they didn't do that. They failed in that department. This is why I got agitated by that, you know. But here, let's also go to my page and to my community and what I had said here. There was something here that I wrote, I believe was yesterday. I said, funny though, Digital Foundry had last week and the week before to test Red Dead Redemption 2, almost for the entire month, and not once they said fake HDR. That's the one that John did on October 25th, Thursday. But all of a sudden now, fake HDR. Something fishy going on here between Rockstar and Digital Foundry. Now here's some comments. Digital Foundry, it's very competent and respected. This is Vladimir, some Russian guy. He said, Digital Foundry, it's very competent and respected. I never said that they are not. I never went after them and said that they're not, you know, respected and competent. They are. But what they did here, they made a mistake here, the way they handled it, and they know it. All right. By using the words, throwing the words fake HDR. You can't be just throwing the words like that when you're a big company and you got 500,000 subscribers. You're sending the wrong message. All right. You bear responsibility when you're 500,000 subscribers to educate the confusing 4K HDR community that's already confused. All right. So this right here, what this guy says right here, Vladimir. All right. Yeah, I can read Cyrillic. I can read Russian, just so you guys know. Digital Foundry is very competent and respected. He will not spoil the reputation because of false information. I never said that they were giving a false results. I didn't say that. But they were making some claims that haven't been proven yet because they haven't been confirmed by the developers. And, you know, when you're making claims like that, then you're saying that they did something to cheat their way into getting into the HDR. All right? That's a big claim to make. That's number one. Number two, there's the way they handled it was unprofessional. You know, to tell people turn off HDR, don't use HDR. It's almost like they said there's no HDR in the game. Like the game doesn't support HDR. There's other games out there I can name that have very bad implementation of HDR. Uncharted doesn't have the best implementation of HDR. I'm sorry. What's the other game out there that doesn't have the best implementation of HDR? There's a bunch of other games out there as well. I can think of top of my head. FIFA 19 doesn't have the best implementation of HDR. Okay. There's a bunch of other games out there that doesn't have best implementation of HDR. Madden 19 doesn't have the best implementation of HDR. But does that mean that they don't have HDR? Does that mean that there's no HDR? Yes, there is HDR. It's just not the best HDR. It's not as best as Forza Horizon 4. Forza Horizon 4 has the best HDR next to Spider-Man. These two, Forza Horizon 4 and Spider-Man, they're the best HDR demos. If you want to showcase the demo of HDR, Forza Horizon 4 and Spider-Man. And then I said to this guy, Vladimir, you work for them? You know Richard personally? Or are you just talking from a defense and fanboy point of view? They have made mistakes in the past. And they said, sound weird. Gustavo says they have more than enough expertise to have seen this before. Exactly. How come they haven't addressed this issue? Because the guy who did the video, John, on October 25th, he did mention HDR, and he did say that the HDR should be left at 100 for the LCD and then 300 for the OLED. But he never said, oh, bad implementation of HDR. He never said the HDR looks bad or anything like that. So, I mean, you had the game for 3 weeks. Digital Foundry had both copies of the game for 3 weeks. Don't tell me you didn't see HDR right away. That's a little bit off. I mean, come on. But all of a sudden now you coming back because you had another of your employees do another test, and then they find out that, hey, there might be this quote-unquote SDR implementation into the HDR container. Bad tone mapping, not the brightest peak brightness or white bright levels. Okay, and we get that. That's true. It's not the best implementation of HDR. We get that. But why wasn't that mentioned? Why wasn't that mentioned before? And you can see right here, it's kind of split. People are getting, right now when it comes to this fake HDR, it's being split. Some people say, hey, it's still HDR. It's better to have some HDR than no HDR at all. And then some are saying, no, turn that sucker off. We don't need it. So it's split. Even the IGN did the video where they said, hey, community split on this, and it's 50-50. Okay. So same thing here. And this guy says, this guy's a troll, so I'm not going to bother with this one. Require more testing. We'll all know, look, this guy's telling me, dude, did you take the time to watch the Digital Foundry video? Yes, I did. You don't need to educate me about that. And then Quantum Apotheosis is my friend, and I told him, look, I just felt they should have handled this whole situation better. Now the confused 4K HDR community will call anything less than 1,000 nits a fake HDR. And the Alex here says, I agree with you, Mr. 4K Digital Foundry are not the holy grail of video gaming analysis. People are so easy to believe something because so and so said, wake up. Well, that's true, Alex, and to a certain extent, I agree. Yes, they have the equipment. I'm not saying that they don't have equipment. They have equipment. They have the cards, the computers, to test, to use the Kalman, a very expensive Kalman equipment, and the software is $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. These are very expensive softwares and equipments they're using, and the capture cards that they're using to do all of this. I'm not saying that they don't have the instruments. I'm not saying that they are incorrect. I'm just simply saying the way they handled the whole situation was done in a poor taste. The way they handled it was done in a very poor taste. Okay? And then telling people to turn off HDR. They might as well just said, you have no HDR. Or it's SDR or something like that. But to call it fake HDR, come on. Either you have HDR or you don't have HDR. Okay? So let's not twist things around. Yes, it's not. Let me repeat this one more time. I agree. It's not the best HDR. There's some things missing there. But it's still better to have some HDR than no HDR at all. It's not a filter. Okay? Digital Foundry knows this. It's not a filter. If I show you a filter on my Samsung called HDR Plus, you will laugh how horrible that is. That's a fake HDR. That's a fake HDR effect. Just like the LG one has the fake HDR effect as well. And these other low-end televisions have the fake HDR effect. That's a fake HDR. This is metadata processing still, but it's implemented poorly by developers. Don't blame the television. Blame the developers for implementing it poorly. But let's not call it fake HDR. That's all I wanted to say. What they should have called it was bad implementation of HDR. And I don't know why is this so hard for people to understand when I bring this point. And then here's the video right here called the Red Dead Redemption 2 Players Reporting HDR Issues. I would play this video for you, but you guys can check it yourself. I don't want to get copyrighted. On this video, IGN simply did a video with the subtitles where they said the community is split 50-50 on this issue. So not everyone agrees. All right. So, guys, here's the thing. I can spend days and days going through all of this. I could spend endless days of making videos about this and explaining this to you in simple, basic terms, what they mean by all this technical jargon about the nits and why they think that they used SDR implementation put in an HDR container. Okay, Those are the pretty hefty claims that they're claiming, okay? But this is something that needs to be verified by developers, okay? If developers of the Rockstar, well, they are Take-Two Games, the Rockstar developers, if they make a statement and they say, yes, this is the method we used to implement the HDR, and this is what we did, and we will have a patch that will fix this, and probably by the end of Christmas or something. If they had made that statement, fine, but I just felt this whole situation, now it's out of control. The floodgates have been opened, the levee has broken, and now forever fake HDR is going to live on. We're going to have to deal with the fake HDR phenomena now. All because Digital Foundry didn't bear responsibility on how to handle it, and then Vincent Teal, like a happy camper, oh, let me make a video too now. Let me use my equipment, let's do this. You guys bear responsibility. Here I am, I'm a small channel, but even I know when there's a responsibility that should be implemented into this. And you guys are huge. You guys are 500,000, man. You guys are 500,000 subscribers. You bear responsibility. And I'm sure Rockstar is not going to appreciate it the way you guys handle this. I'm not saying the game doesn't have issues. Yes, it does. But they will not appreciate these claims that you guys are putting out there. I guarantee you that, Richard. They will not appreciate it. And I guarantee you that, Vincent Teal, they will not appreciate it. All right? You guys handled it poorly. And you know it. You know it. And that's honestly, this is my last video that I'm going to address this issue because I'm sick and tired of this. I'm sick and tired of this whole fake HDR crap. There is HDR. It's better to have some HDR than no HDR at all. It's not fake HDR. It's just bad HDR. It's not a filter. Okay? It's not a filter. You still have UHD color. You're still processing HDR. But it's bad implementation of HDR. Okay? If you use a filter, that's a fake HDR. And I'll make a video and I'll explain what the filter fake HDR is and what the true HDR, what the real HDR is. Okay, so the problem is they twisted things around. And this is where I got really agitated, and this is why I got so upset and criticized Digital Foundry for not being responsible enough to take a better responsibility on how they called this. And all they had to do was say bad implementations of HDR. You can use it, it's there, but it's not the best. Till we get some more information from Rockstar, till they send some new patches to fix this issue, that's what they should have done. But flat out fake HDR, Cry Me a River or fake HDR. It's just now we're stuck with this. Now that's it. Now there's going to be a more toxic fake HDR community out there. Like I said, I'm going to end this video by simply saying this. Honestly, I'm going to try to make this my last video because I'm really sick and tired of this whole fake HDR fiasco. I think I explained everything I need to explain here on this video and how I feel about it. And if you guys can take this opinion of mine for what it is, well, then too bad. What can I tell you? I think I was perfectly clear on this video on how I feel about this whole situation. Big companies have huge responsibility on how they call something. All right? And please don't send me charts. I know how to read the charts. I know how to read a computer on the Calman. Okay, it's just it's too expensive for me to purchase that equipment. If some of you want to, look, if Digital Foundry wants to send me that equipment, please send me that equipment. If Calman wants to sponsor me and send me equipment, please send me the equipment and I'll read it for you. And I'll give you my honest opinion on what my eyes see versus what the computer's telling me to calibrate. I have done that before. I know how to use the measurement. It's really not that difficult, guys. It's not a brain surgery. It's not a heart surgery. It's not that difficult, okay? But it's not about the analysis This is about the way they called their analysis and the way they claimed it, using the term fake HDR. That's what rubbed me the wrong way. And now we're stuck with that forever. Thank you, Digital Foundry. You know, you opened the floodgates of this fake HDR, and it's going to flood into even furthermore with this toxic 4K HDR community that we already have. It's already toxic as it is because people are already confused. They're just starting to learn about 4K. They're jumping into a 4K, and now this is going to confuse even more this community. And it's all because of you not handling it properly. That's all I gotta say. And this will be my last video. Honestly, I'm done with this. I'm not gonna do another video about Digital Foundry. I've done already 3-4 videos. They're there. I said what I need to say, but this video should clarify my stance once and for all, so you guys understand, and that way you have some. You have it. It's coming straight from my mouth to your ears, not for some other people out there with the agenda. All right, guys. Thank you for watching.